What's going on, everybody? This is Rick from Studio Spades, and today we're going to make a meadow field with animated grass and a path going through it, and everything will be procedural. So when you move the curve that the path uses, it'll update the texturing and also the removal of the grass. It'll make room for the grass, and it'll do everything with Falloff Tool. So what is Falloff Tool? Falloff Tool is a handy collection of nodes I made that allows you to output vector values like location or scale or rotation values, float values, integer values automatically connected to a fall-off. And we have different types of fall-offs in Falloff Tool. So let's get going and I'll show you how to make this. So first off, I've prepared a very simple scene which consists of this plane of 10 by 10 meters with a very simple ground shader or dirt shader, and I've prepared some models I bought off of a website a while back, and it's just a collection of nice grass meshes, as you can see, with the origin point, this orange dot here at the bottom. So yeah, that's basically it. Here's the origin point, and that's basically it. So quite simple scene. If you don't have any grass, you can always make it yourself. You can model a green grass plate, for example, and then have an array modifier copy it in 360 degrees. So when you model it yourself, you'll save some money. But I like the realism look of these grass models, so that's why I'm using those. And that's basically it. So yeah, quite simple scene, and let's get started. So in order to use Falloff Tool, we'll need a geometry node setup on this plane. So let's add a geometry node setup right here, and let's get going. So I want to start off by scattering the grass models all over this plane. So we'll need a distribute points on faces for that. So we'll look for distribute points on faces, which distributes points on the faces of a mesh. Pretty simple. But as you can see, the original mesh disappears in this case because this node outputs points. So you only get the points, but I want the mesh back, so we'll have to combine it with the original mesh. So we'll use join geometry and plug in the original geometry into that, and then we have the best of both worlds. We have the original mesh back, and we have the points where we're gonna scatter the grass instances on. Let me just rearrange the nodes a bit. So yeah, like I said, we want instances on those points, so look for instances on points. Since this node outputs points and this accepts points, now everything disappears because it outputs instances, of course, and we don't have an instance plugged into this yet. So we'll grab the grass collection. It's important to put them in a collection, and set it to relative and separate children. That means that all the meshes that are in here will be separate objects instead of one big blob of meshes. They all need to be separate. So plug in the grass collection, and then boom, we can already see something happening here. But it's still processing everything as one mesh, all these meshes in the collection. So we'll have to pick instance, and then it'll yeah, use one instance of all those meshes on every dot or every point. So we get a bit more realistic and random look, which already looks pretty nice. So let's rearrange it a bit. Now, in order to create a bit more realism in here, I want to have the grass move and animate over time. So we could use a couple of Falloff Tool nodes for that, but in this case, I'm going to use the wave node, or the wave Falloff. So let's drag in that one. And as you can see, we have a rotation value here in the instance on points node, which rotates those instances. And luckily, Falloff Tool outputs rotation values. So we can plug in the rotation of the wave Falloff into the rotation of the instances, and nothing happens yet because we didn't fill in a value yet by which we want to rotate. So open location, rotation scale, unfold rotation, and then we can maybe set this to, I don't know, 35 degrees and press play, and we already get some movement in there. Now I am rotating the grass because that saves us some processing power, because we're still using instances in this case. Now you can bend the grass as well, but that forces you to realize the instances to actual geometry, and that'll be way more harder for your computer to process. And this keeps everything lightweight, even though it might not look super realistic. It's a handy way of just creating something that's lightweight for your computer to render. Okay, so I want to up the density a bit. Maybe I'll switch to points on disk, which also allows you to select a minimal distance between those points, which can be very handy. Definitely handier than using the random distribution method. So let's up the density a bit. I don't know, maybe 30. So we got a little bit of dirt showing through, but if you look at it from this angle, it's already starting to look quite realistic for a pretty simple setup like this. Pretty nice. Now the wave fall off comes with an empty, and all the waves travel towards the center in this case. So I might want to offset it to the side so it looks more like actual waves of wind or gusts of wind going in a direction and not all directions. Pretty cool. Now maybe we can increase the realism a bit by also introducing some randomness to the scale and rotation on the z-axis. So we can maybe use a random modifier for that. Let's plug it into there, and I'm gonna at least tweak the scale, make it a bit more random, because right now everything is set to 1, 1, 1, and the random modifier allows you to output random values. I just close this one, so I want random values on the scale value. So open location rotation scale, open scale, and by default compensate scale is set to 1, 1, 1, which means that your meshes will stay at a size of 1. If you set this to 0, everything will disappear, and of course we don't want that. So this way the meshes are all their original size, and you can tweak the randomness with this value right here. So if I want everything to be random by a factor of half, you fill in 0.5, and some meshes will be bigger by a factor of 0.5, some will be bigger by a factor of 0.1, 0.3, 0.2479, whatever. It's all between 0 and 0.5. But as you can see, it's sort of glitching. That's because it's animating with the timeline. But under settings, we can set the seed multiplier to 0, then it will stop. And then you can change the seed manually here, so you can see them pop to a new size when you change the seed. Maybe I want to turn down the scale actually, because the grass is already kind of big. Maybe I'll set it to minus 0.9, 0.9. Maybe that's a bit too much. 0.5, I'll do that. Okay, we can up the density a bit more, maybe to 40, 60 maybe, something like that. So we have a bit more random sizes in there. And it's already looking like a gust of wind going over a meadow type field. But it's moving too fast for my taste. So let's go back into the wave fall off and see if we can slow this down. Go into the settings, and speed multiplier set to 0.2, maybe set to 0.1, and that's pretty nice. So it's a bit slower, starts to look a bit more like actual wind. Cool. All right. So that's already starting to look pretty cool. And now I want to make room for a path that'll go through this this little field right here. So people have something to walk on. So in order to do that, we can use the curve modifier. So we can basically draw a path with a curve. And if we want to change the direction or the shape of the path, we can change the shape of the curve, and it'll update in real time. Add a curve, fall off, and it'll place a curve in your scene, a straight one. And let's put a scale instances in there. Boom. So we can scale these grass instances. And in this case, I want to have them scaled down to 0 once they get near the curve. So we'll plug the scale into this one, scale, and go to scale, 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 and set this to -1, so they'll disappear once they're near the curve, as you can see, but it'll go gradually. So we have grass going smaller and smaller until it finally disappears near the curve, which is pretty nice. Now, if you think this is a bit too wide of a path, don't worry. Of course, we can change that. We have some settings here, like the mesh radius. So this curve is actually being meshed. You don't see it, but it's generating a mesh around it, a circular mesh. And it's, in this case, a radius of 1 meter, but we can, of course, make that a bit smaller, 0.2. Looks about right to me. Then I'll go to top view and I'll start tweaking this path in edit mode. So grab some of the points and moving them with G, and everything should update automatically, as you can see. Pretty cool. Nice. I like that. Maybe add another point with extrude. So E. Yeah, I like this. This is a nice little path that that can go through this little meadow here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now I want a actual path to show up, but I don't want it to be this dirt path, because I want the dirt to be under the grass, but I want an actual, I don't know, maybe a cobblestone path. So I'm going to use a material for this. Let's find cobblestone. So I have this material. I think this is part of Blender. You'll have to download it, but you can download it in your Azure browser in the latest version, as far as I know. So yeah, let's add this material to the plane. So cobblestone. Okay, let's go into the shader editor and make sure that we don't pack it, so we can change all the settings here. And let's turn, I think, down. Yeah, let's turn down the size so it fits the actual scale of the scene a bit better, although it changes the cobblestones from angular to a bit more round in this case, but that's okay. Oh, but wait, we can we change that? No, in this case we can't. Oh, sorry, maybe we can use this one. Yeah, that seems to work better. Okay, sorry, so we can use this scale. Yeah, that's definitely better. Looks a bit more realistic. Maybe set to 12. Okay, so now I want the curve fall off to mix between the cobblestone material and the dirt shader that was underneath the grass here, but now it's been replaced by the cobblestone. So yeah, I want to mix between those two, and the curve has to do that, and that's very easy to do actually. Just make sure that you subdivide the plane first, because this plane will need some faces, so I'll subdivide it first. As you can see, got some subdivisions in here. Well, we need that in order for this to work, so make sure your plane is subdivided, and we can store the information of this curve as an attribute and then use that attribute to mix between two shaders. So in order to do that, we need to select, in this case, the float, and do a store named attribute, and we'll call this mix material. Boom, and copy that name. And we have float data here, so make sure that's a float, and you can use point, edge, or face data, for example, for this. So that's the data of this mesh, but if you barely have any subdivisions on your mesh, there's not a lot of point or face data to work with, so that's why you need those subdivisions. And as you can see, it inputs geometry as well, so let's make sure that the plane that has those face data, that has that face or point data, is being ran through this node here. So I guess not. We'll plug it in like this, plug it back in, so we store that named attribute. And now we can use this attribute, mix material, in the shader editor. So let's go to the shader editor, and now we're in the cobblestone material, and let's select the dirt shader as well, and then copy that node and paste it into the cobblestone in this case. So paste the dirt here. So now we have two shaders inside of the cobblestone shader, and add a attribute. boom, and a mix shader. So we can mix those two shaders. So as you can see now, we can mix between those two. So we have the dirt on the left and the cobblestone on the right. But when you use the attribute we just made, the float data of that curve in the scene that we captured, as it were, and the name was mix_material, as you might remember. See? So this is the attribute, store named attribute mix material, and that attribute is now being used as a mix factor. So plug in the factor, and then boom, we should be able to see dirt underneath the grass. As you can see the brown dirt here, but nearing the curve, it starts mixing in the cobblestone. And since it's geometry nodes and it's all procedural, you can change this curve and it'll update the texturing as well. Very cool. Nice. Now, another thing you might want to do is have the path be a bit less wide or wider than the point where the grass starts disappearing. Because right now we're using the float value to mix the material in, and the same Falloff Tool curve node or curve falloff for the scale. But if you copy paste this node, it uses the same curve, but then we might be able to plug in the float into the other one. And now under clamp, you can change the range to make it stronger or weaker, or we could change the mesh radius of that mesh that's being wrapped around this curve right here, that basically tells geometry nodes how wide this path should be. So if we increase it or decrease it, you can see, well, it's not super obvious because yeah, there's a lot of grass blocking everything. So maybe we can change the grass curve, make that a bit wider. So in this case, you'll see some more dirt, and maybe we can tweak the path now. See, so now they're both separated from each other. Pretty cool. And again, everything is procedural. So if you don't like the direction of the path, just change it. And yeah, just a lot of flexibility here. Cool. Maybe press play and have the grass move again. But I want another thing to increase the realism. Now, first I'm just gonna make sure that the grass is a bit closer. I just like that look. Now, another thing that could increase the realism of the scene is have this path be lower than the rest of the grass. So we'll be able to use a set position for that. So let's move this node up here, since it's connected to that attribute. Maybe change the layout a bit so it's a bit easier to see. And yeah, another thing I would like to add is a set position onto the plane. So just make sure you do it before the store named attribute. So in that case, it'll pick up any changes we do onto the plane here. So set position and make sure that, let me see, this is the material mixer, of course. So in this case, I'm going to use a set position, and I'm going to use the same node, but I'm going to use the location value of it, offset, and make sure that under location, I lower it a bit. And now you can see that the path is a bit lower than the grass, but the grass is now moving with it because it's being distributed on the old plane, which is not processed by the set position yet. So just make sure you disconnect that and then plug it after the set position, and then the grass will move with it. And then you can tweak it and the grass will move along. And since, of course, the curve has a radius, once it's out of radius, the scale effect on the grass will disappear. So you can increase the radius, of course, or just make sure that the path is not that deep. It's also not subdivided enough, the plane, I think. So maybe subdivide it a couple of times more so the transition will be smoother and nicer. And there you have it. You have a nice cobblestone path inside of a moving meadow And again, everything is procedural. So if you don't like the look, just change it and everything will update for you. So yeah, that's this short and sweet tutorial on Falloff Tool on how to create a sort of meadow-like model with a path running through with cobblestone, materials being mixed automatically, using a curve fall off and a random modifier to randomize the scale of the grass. And of course, we also used a wave fall off to have the grass move in waves. So we get this nice wind effect in here. So yeah, that's the power of Falloff Tool. You can do a lot with it. Everything is procedural. It outputs vector values, location, rotation, scale, integers, float values. So basically any node that accepts these values in geometry nodes, you can connect Falloff Tool to it. And those values will be automatically connected to a falloff. So it's insanely powerful. It brings lots of possibilities to geometry nodes. Even if you're a beginner, you can get some really crazy procedural results, not just for modeling, but also for animating. So yeah, if you can think of it, you can make it with Falloff Tool. It's available now on Superhive Market. I hope you enjoy it. I definitely do enjoy using it, and yeah, I hope you will too. So this was Rick, another short but sweet tutorial, I hope, and I hope you learned something. See you in the next video. Take care.